continue on time. And one of the things about the master of ceremonies, whether it's at a wedding or at a conference, they're the ones that get blamed if things do go off schedule. So we will get started. It's 1 o'clock. I'm Stephen Hurley, and I'm again honored to be with you over the next couple of days to keep things moving. I have a bell. And you'll hear that bell a couple of times during your session. I'm going to ring it as quietly about 10 minutes before a session is due to end. And then once again, 5 minutes. We're going to try to end each session 5 minutes before the top of the hour, just to give people a chance to get up and stretch and get a drink of water or coffee or whatever you want. So we'll try. That is the plan. So I am thrilled to be here today. It's kind of an intersection of 3 days. It's the UN World Children's Day. In Canada, it's a National Child Day. In Ottawa, where many of you are, it's the Ottawa Child Friendly Community Day. And I think that this conference and the theme of this conference is so compelling. I was saying earlier that I was just writing a book review for a book by David Price out of the UK, where he talks about the power of us and the power of mass ingenuity to really change the world. And that's going to be the dynamic moving forward. He would be thrilled to know that this type of conference was going on during a global pandemic, because it's all about energizing the grassroots and mobilizing and catalyzing ideas. In this case around, well, we can't really be gathering around a more important theme than children. The idea of creating child-friendly homes and child-friendly schools, and in the process, child-friendly communities. And so it is my honor to move us through these next couple of days. And I'm going to ask that Monique Menach begin and start us off with a few words and a land acknowledgement. Monique is from Barrier Lake. We saw a picture of what that lake looks like in Quebec, and also a PhD candidate. And I would love to talk to you later about that, Monique, at the University of Ottawa. So I'm going to turn it over to Monique. Thank you.
Miigwech. And Pajashik, welcome. Welcome to everyone. We're hosting on virtually on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory. Monique Menach, Indigenous, Algonquins of Barrier Lake and Ojibwa. My name is Monique Menach, and I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake. And I've been thinking about what to say to such an esteemed group of people. Education is one of my passions. It's something that I've worked in and around for many years. And I thought of a story. It's a quick story. Hopefully I won't get Stephen's bell. So I'll tell you this story that comes from my community. It was gifted to me by a woman named Anita DeCourcy. And so the story is that the Creator was giving all of creation a gift. She had already created all the animals and the plants and the birds and everything, and she wanted to give everyone a gift, and human beings. So she gave them this gift of light, and so everybody got together to talk about how they would take care of this gift, how they would make sure they treated it with respect and make sure that it was kept in a good, safe place. And so there was this huge group of all of creation. And when they started talking, there was this little mouse. And she said, I've got an idea. I know what we should do with the light. But they couldn't hear her because she was really small. Moose are big and bears are big and people are big, and nobody could hear the little mouse. So they're talking away, and somebody said, why don't we put it up in the sky? So they talked about that for a long time until they realized, someone said, someday someone might be able to go up into the sky and they might be able to take our gift of light. So they thought, yeah, that's true. Maybe we won't do that. In the meantime, the little mouse was so persistent. She kept saying, I have an idea. But of course they couldn't hear her. And then somebody else said, why don't we put it deep, deep, deep into the ocean? So they talked about that for a while, and finally somebody said, someday someone might be able to go deep, deep, deep into the ocean, and they might be able to take our gift of light. So they thought, no, won't do that. So they talked about it for quite a while. And then there was a lull, that quiet in a conversation, which naturally occurs. Everybody just stops talking for a minute. And into that quiet, the little mouse shouted, "I have an idea." And they heard her, and they turned to her and they said, "What is your idea, mouse?" And she said, "Let's everyone take a piece of that light and put it inside of us. That way, when we're feeling sad, we can share our light, and it will help strengthen us and make us feel better. And if someone else is feeling badly, then we can share our light with them, and that'll help strengthen it. And then if something happens to one piece of light, well, we still have all the others." So that's what they did. And that's why every member of creation has this gift of light, this gift of life within them. And my mom always told me, if you're feeling badly, volunteer for something, because if you're helping someone else, you start to feel better. And that's that gift being shared. And when we share that gift and we all recognize that we all have that connection to one another, then it's amazing what can happen. It's absolutely amazing. So I would like to open this space with a few words to the Creator. Kachimigwich Jemnido. Thank you, Creator. Thank you for the water, for the trees, for the plants, for the ones who fly, for the ones who swim, for the ones who crawl, for the furred, for the feathered, for the four-legged, and for the two-legged. And thank you for bringing these people together with open hearts, with open minds. Help them to see truth. Help them to hear beauty. Help them to share their light with each other in a way that is kind and compassionate, and help each of us to walk away stronger from this conference and with tools that we can bring home to our lives and to our work. Kachimigwich, 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 Kachimigwich. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope this is just an amazing conference. Thanks.
Thank you, Monique. And I'm reminded of the words of Thomas King, who says, "The truth about stories is that's all we are." And thank you for yours. That bell is not me, by the way.
No, it's people coming in. He also was saying, now that you've heard the story, what are you going to do with it?
Do with it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So I will remind people where they are. This is the Uniting for Children and Youth Child-Friendly Community Conference. And this is something, I know a lot of people gathered are from the Ottawa area. I'm not. I'm coming to you from the Voice Ed Radio studio in Milton, Ontario, in my cave in Milton, Ontario. So I'm happy to connect with so many of you, and look forward to meeting more of you over the next couple of days. I believe we have some remarks from Ottawa Mayor Watson to begin today's proceedings.
Hi, this is Jim Watson, Mayor of the City of Ottawa. Now, since I can't meet you virtually for this afternoon's Child-Friendly Community Conference, I wanted to say a quick word to kick things off. First and foremost, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the amazing June Girvan for organizing this wonderful event and for her many years of work in the community for young people. She's devoted her life to nurturing, protecting, and giving voice to children and young people, and she has invested her talents and resources in bettering their lives and the lives of newly arrived Canadians. After her retirement, June founded the JDEC in Ottawa, where she is volunteer-in-chief. The center serves children, youth, and immigrant families through unique programs that foster intellectual understanding, racial harmony, and social justice. Her exemplary civic achievements and her impact on the lives of so many people in our community are an inspiration. She is a recipient of the prestigious Order of Ontario, and most recently in 2018, I was proud to present June with the City Builder Award for her volunteer efforts in our community. Today's conference coincides with the UN World Child Day, Canada's National Child Day, and Ottawa's Child and Friendly Community Day. This is a chance to raise awareness and share ideas related to the benefits of a child-friendly home and school. I'm sure that you will all find this to be a productive and empowering event, and you will hear from some great speakers around the city, our country, and beyond. Every child is sacred. Thank you, June, and thank you for participating. Merci beaucoup.
We're going to meet June and others, and I would like to introduce the esteemed Dr. Richard Barwell, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Education at the University of Ottawa. Pleasure to have him here, and he's going to be introducing our first speakers for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kwe. Bonjour, hello to everyone, familiar and new faces. June, Kyrstin, and Sylvia, it's good to see you. I was asked to introduce June, and it's really an honor for me, with no little humility in such distinguished company, to introduce her, and she will begin the conference by starting off this first session. And I will be brief because you are undoubtedly here, as am I, to hear from June, from Kyrstin and Sylvia. So I'll add a little bit on to what the mayor just said. Since moving to Canada from Jamaica in the 1950s, June has made a long and distinguished contribution to the lives of the people of Ottawa as a teacher, school principal, Ministry of Education official, community leader, organizer, advocate, and is, I am proud to say, a graduate of the Faculty of Education at the University of Ottawa. And her contribution has been recognized with many awards, as mentioned by Mayor Watson, including her induction into the Order of Ontario in 2016 for her work. Based on my own experience, I can tell you that June is an opener of doors. To give just one example, she has been instrumental in convincing many institutions in the city of Ottawa, including the city itself, school boards, police service, and others, to recognize and adopt the United Nations Decade for People of African Descent. She is very persuasive. In my case, she made an appointment. I didn't know her. She made an appointment, came to meet me in my office, set out exactly why my faculty should adopt the decade. She left some documents for me to read, and I looked at them and thought, yeah, this is a good idea. But I confess, I got busy with other things. And then I got a phone call. So, Richard, what's happening? So, long story short, I arranged for her to speak to the Faculty's Council, who immediately and unanimously voted to support her proposal. And so we adopted the UN Decade and continue to develop plans resulting from that adoption. It seems to me that June's work reflects three important commitments. First, she is committed to children, to the rights of children to grow up free, happy, and without experiencing or learning prejudice or discrimination. Second, she is committed to human rights. And this commitment shapes all her work for children, for youth, and for everyone. And third, she's committed to the possibility of compassion, to seeing and understanding the lives behind each person. I think compassion is particularly important at the moment when we can be quick to judge, to dismiss, or to tweet without perhaps first looking at the whole person. And I commend June for these three commitments. And so, without further ado, please welcome the remarkable June Girvan. Normally we should clap now, but we can't clap on Zoom.
Kyrstin.
Thank you so much, Richard. I would not be actually here without people like you, because you say I'm a door opener, but you open doors to me. And because you open doors to me, I get to do what I'm here to do. So thank you so very much for that. And looking forward to all that the faculty is going to do to bring into self-actualization all of the young people who go through the faculty, so that they can, in turn, can help the children to self-actualize. Thank you so very much. It's been an enormous pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for being Richard. I am here to honor Richard Franchen. Richard Franchen is a kindred spirit. He's a fellow educator. And today we mark Child Day together. It is the anniversary of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And we mark that in Ottawa as doing what we can to have Ottawa be experienced as a safe, child-friendly community for children, with the right to voice, the right to friendly conversations, healthy conversations, and to the right to be themselves, their best selves. On this day, Richard has brought us together. And I honor Richard in the spirit of John Peters Humphrey. John Peters Humphrey is one of my forefathers' honorable kinsmen. He's a man of Canada who drafted the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Richard has convened this conference for us to focus on respect for and delivery of the rights of the child as a learner, as a seeker, as a new visitor to the planet, this magnificent planet, to help the child to satisfy the child's curiosity, the myriad experiences, being curious, the myriad ideas that the child might have, all are novel to the child, and all needs a guide and a support system. And in Richard's work, that's what the child is being offered. Thank you, Richard. When the child says, "Don't fence me in," when the child pleads, "Don't lock me in a classroom. Don't let me sit on a bench for hours," Richard is answering that call of the child. My own work is an answer to the why of my Earth visit. And in response to the experiences I've had in Ottawa, the hometown I chose for my children. Some of it is really hard work. It is Zhnekira work. Zhnekira is the name of my collective name of my children. The focus of the work is the human rights of all children, children of the maple leaf, children of all human colors of the sun. The theme of the work is every child is sacred. Our future depends on our friendship with children and with the earth. The work promotes the child's right to be heard in healthy conversations about things that matter to them. Shakira Dinkanish Education Center with Every Child is Sacred began as an immigrant mother's imperative to create a safe, friendly space for her children in the system. It expanded to my service in the system. It continues in community. The work is based on personal and societal covenants and initiatives sacred to children. In the beginning, the work was framed by the Nativity story, which I interpreted as a teaching about how we can choose to show up in the life of a child. Later, the work came to be framed by international covenants and initiatives, covenants which have been ratified by Canada. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is the premier international covenant of the child. Supporting covenants that are ratified by Canada include the UN Decade of Human Rights, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, the UN Decade for People of African Descent, Development, Recognition, Justice, with people of African descent, a distinct group whose human rights must be promoted and protected. International initiatives include UNICEF's Child Friendly Cities Initiative, the UN International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and UNESCO's World Philosophy Day. So Every Child is Sacred observes Universal Child Day and Canada's Child Day on this day. The day marks November 20, 1989, when the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child was ratified. His Worship Mayor Jim Watson issues a proclamation for the day. The Akan symbol, the Sankofa bird, is a bird that's going forward by looking backward. It's about introspection. The work I do in Ottawa is powered by introspection on my ancestry and social heritage. My children's maternal ancestry inherited through me include the doctrine of discovery, the Middle Passage, plantation slavery, colonization, rebellions, independence in my birth country, Jamaica. My children's paternal ancestry is in the Holocaust. I myself am of European and African descent. Until 1925, my maternal ancestry were uniquely in Africa. My forefathers' ancestry were uniquely in Europe. My forefathers were kinsmen and kindred spirits of people like Christopher Columbus, and in Canada, Sir John A. Macdonald. Men whose statues are being torn down today. Men who had sextants, but no moral compass. In Derek Chauvin, I see my forefathers. In George Floyd, I see my foremothers and their kin. My forefathers, my European forefathers and their kindred spirits did not hold their children born of my African foremothers to be sacred. If every child is sacred, then it stands to reason that my forefathers too were once sacred children. So my burning question is, what happened to them? What happened in their journey to manhood? The arc of my work is atonement, reconciliation, and covenant and celebration. It's about why I'm here. Atoning for the forefathers, enabling their souls to find rest, reconciling within myself with this complex heritage, making covenant to new generations, fully intentional about the past I've inherited, the present I own, the future I'm creating, passing a cleaner slate to generations. Legacy. My work is about trying to understand how these forefathers of mine became Herods when they could have been a Joseph or a shepherd or a magus. In these times when statues to Christopher Columbus and my forefathers' kinsmen and kindred spirits are being ripped down, spirits who became slave traders, slave factors, like Sir John A. Macdonald, men seeming devoid of empathy, men who are heroic forces in the life of a child. How did they get to be who they were? Each of them was once a sacred child. How did a sacred child grow up to be men who so desecrate children? What happened? What is their story? What might we learn from the story of these forefathers of mine about the rights of children? Bob Marley sings, "Every big man that you ever did see was once a baby, a sacred child." Mayor Jim Watson's Child Day proclamation for today, 2020, reads, Child Friendly Day 2020 will focus on the traumatic formative years of Sir John A. Macdonald with the theme, "Give me a child until he's 7, and I will show you the man." Quote by Aristotle. How did Sir John A. Macdonald come to be Sir John A. Macdonald? He didn't create himself. What do we say about the rights of the child, Sir John A. Macdonald, who became the man, whose statue has been pulled down? We invite you to join the conversation. So in closing, I honor and celebrate Richard, a splendid man, a man who have brought us together to share how we're honoring the agency and the rights of children. And I give thanks to Richard for this Educators Legacy Conference, as we, owners of the present, creators of the future, as we work together for our generations, for the rights of all children. Thank you, Richard.
I should just take a moment to thank June for that. I appreciate the sentiments. We all are working together to make this happen. I think we have a good chance with the state that we're in right now to pull together as full communities and really bring the democratic approach to life to the fore, fight back the forces against it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And so now, thank you, Richard, again. So now I would like to introduce Sylvia Smith. There's a very good reason why Sylvia Smith's email is trouble with normal. Sylvia is a trailblazer. The themes of Child Friendly Day in Ottawa are Every Child is Sacred. Ottawa experiences a safe, child-friendly community. The child's right to be heard and healthy conversations. That was the dynamic in the space that was occupied by Sylvia Smith and her students when Project of Heart came to be. Articles 12, 13, 14, and 17 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child were just some of the articles of the convention that Sylvia had in full play. Article 12 calls for respect for the children's views and for adults who take them seriously. Article 13 speaks of their right to share their thoughts freely about what they learn, what they think, and what they feel. Article 14 speaks to their right to choose their own thoughts and opinion. Article 17 speaks to the child's right to access information. And so it was that Project of Heart was co-created by the teacher and the taught. Learning together, journeying together, growing together. And so it was that children would come to say, our journey with Project of Heart has left us feeling excited, grateful, wondering. What is the word to describe a project like this, they asked. It is a project of truth. It is a project of reconciliation. We have learned, we have grown, we have been inspired. We took our time to ensure that we put our very best effort into a project that meant so very much. Project of Heart then was created by Sylvia and her students. It was created to commemorate the lives of thousands of Indigenous children who died as a result of the residential school experience. Project of Heart was recognized by the Governor General's Award for History Teaching. Next month, December 15, 2020, marks the 5th anniversary of our Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. On December 15, 2015, TRC commissioners recognized Sylvia as a TRC ambassador. Thank you, Sylvia, for teaching us all how to be good allies, how to do what is right by the First Peoples of the land. Thank you.
And I want to thank you, June, for that introduction. I'm not used to having introductions like that, so thank you very much, Chimigwach. And I also want to thank everyone who has spoken before me, our moderator, Steve, the two Richards, Monique, who gave us that wonderful teaching. Thank you. And before I take a few minutes just to tell you how Project of Heart came into existence, I want to acknowledge Kyrstin Dumont, who is with us today as well. And if there's anything that either one of you want to add or to ask me while I'm talking, please feel free to do so. I guess I want to start out by acknowledging the Algonquin people. Thank you so much. We're here on this land. And I'm hoping that with the land acknowledgement and understanding our indebtedness to the First Peoples, that we'll all be inspired to take action to upraise and to center Indigenous peoples, Algonquin peoples, their knowledge systems, so that we, the later comers, can learn to think and perceive differently and act differently for the sakes of all of our children who are counting on us. This is a little blast from the past, but when June introduced me, and I think of Project of Heart, by the way, it's still ongoing and it is owned by the communities across Canada. There are hubs in almost every province, and it has been done internationally. And this could never have happened had the hearts and the spirits of the children that I worked with at an alternative school the last 25 years of my teaching career were done in the alternative setting. And it is these children to which I owe homage to, because it's their brilliance, it's their strengths and their resiliences that allowed me to harness all of that brilliance through listening and through using my position of authority as a teacher to get that knowledge where it needed to go. And it was a struggle, I will admit. It was a struggle. But there's anything that's really worthwhile, really, if you don't go through that struggling phase, I don't think it would be what it is. And it started with a young student, her name was Andrea. And Andrea was learning about Canadian history. It was a grade 10 history course. And she was absolutely shocked when she found out, she did a little deeper delving into Indian residential schools from that grade 10 history textbooks where only 63 words were dedicated to that whole era in Canada. Her emotions were very engaged when she found out through reading Peter Bryce's report on the Indian residential schools. He was the Inspector General of the schools. He worked for the Department of Indian Affairs. When she found out all of the children, the percentages of children who had died, and she came to me and she said, "Is this true? Do you think this is true?" And I said, yes, sadly, this is true. Well, then why haven't we heard of it before? Why isn't the truth of our nation being talked about in this school and in the schools I went to previously? I've never heard of this before. This is the first time. And I said, okay, what are we going to do about it? And I'll tell you, she took the bull by the horns. It was she who wrote a proposal to our school in the OCDSB, and she asked for just a few monies to put together so that we could start building some remembrances, some decorating some gestures of reconciliation, because to her, every life that was lost was a life that had to be brought back in spirit so that we could remember and that we could do better. And making a rather lengthy story, this is now 13, 14 years ago that this started. I would just like to say that with Andrea's initiative, it caught on to the rest of the classroom, it caught on to the rest of the school, and they would not stop there. They wanted to share this with their previous teachers. And to that end, we were quite successful. We put together these kits. We knew there wasn't enough being done in the schools, so we just took it upon ourselves. And Mr. Prime Minister Stephen Harper had just done the apology for the Indian residential schools. Our students didn't believe he was being sincere. They didn't think that he was going to educate, so they took it upon themselves. And this is what happens when you take all that children are capable of doing and you allow them the freedom to be able to go deeply, to learn and to work with that troubling knowledge, because it was indeed troubling. And once they could do that, once they could do something about that, and we started working with Cindy Blackstock from the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society. We started working with the Native Women's Association of Canada. We came out to support their rallies. Our students could be seen working and being advocates, standing with Indigenous children, First Nations children, and their families who were looking for justice, because they thought that there is no sense in making an apology unless you can prove it. How do you prove that you're sorry? And to that end, because I am keeping very closely, Stephen, you'd be very proud of me. I've got a clock right on my table. I am going to invite Kyrstin Dumont into the conversation. And this conference has allowed so much relationship building to happen. And I was very pleased. Kyrstin, who is a proud Algonquin youth activist, she was the winner of the first ever Kiwanis Dreamkeepers Youth in Service Award. And this award was given in June Girvan's name. So I've got June, I've got Kyrstin here. The award was presented to Kyrstin on Martin Luther King Day to recognize youth who are walking in his footsteps and in June's footsteps and in all these heroes who are legacy builders. And Kyrstin, I'm wondering if you can weigh in at this point in time. I'm going to hand things over to your very capable hands, and you can take us from there.
Thank you so much, and thank you for including me here, Sylvia. If it wasn't for you, I don't think I would be involved in this conference. So I really appreciate you making me a part of this. Yeah, it's kind of a coincidence, actually, that we're talking about residential schools, as I'm currently wearing a sweater that says Burn Sage, Sweetgrass, and the Indian Act. And the more that I think of this sweater, the more I think about the residential schools, as in 1920, within the Indian Act, they actually made it mandatory for Indigenous youth and children to go to residential schools. My family is very fortunate for my grandfather to never have to have gone, my mother to have never have to experience those kind of things. But even with that being said, my family still has experienced intergenerational trauma because of the fact that when my grandfather was growing up, he was taught English instead of his traditional mother tongue, which both of his parents were actually able to speak. His mother and father thought that to keep him out of the system, it would be better to raise their kids in a westernized way rather than an Indigenous way of life. So with that being said, we are here for an education conference. So I guess I would just tell you a bit about myself and then get into what I was going to be speaking about today. I'm a 20-year-old activist, advocate, and model on my days off. I also currently work full-time for Service Canada. I was one of their youngest employees and one of their very first Indigenous faces within my department. So that was really inspiring for me. I got hired when I was 19 years old, and I'm still working towards my high school diploma. So I definitely have a busy life at the moment. But I feel that it's very important to mention these things because a lot of, at least my experience, a lot of people never believed that I would amount up to anything. Whenever I was in the 4th grade, I went to a public school in the east end of Ottawa. And thankfully, once my mother got pregnant with my sister, who is 10 years younger than me, we actually moved to the south end of Ottawa. And with that being said, that was the first time that I have ever witnessed a Catholic school. And, you know, a lot of my family was very concerned about that because we were a very proud Algonquin Anishinaabe family. They were concerned that my point of view and my thoughts would be warped by this school, as we believe in the Creator, whereas the school I went to was very insistent on believing in God. But whenever I went to that school, they actually told my mother that the school before that, the public school, thought that I was basically a human vegetable. And, you know, I never really understood the kind of racism, discrimination, and just ignorance that came from that school until my sister went there. And when my mother was talking about sending my sister there, I got very nervous as I was concerned that they would treat her the same way that they treated me. And my concerns were correct. They treated my brown-skinned, beautiful, brown hair, brown-eyed little sister the exact same way they treated me. And I'm going to let you all know that, yes, I do deal with a few learning disabilities, whereas my sister was blessed to not have these. We have different parents, and I unfortunately inherited my father's educational issues, as some may say. So that being said, they treated my sister the exact same way they treated me, even though we have two completely different minds. And my sister excels now at the school that she's currently going to, which as soon as my mother realized that they were treating my little sister the exact same way they treated me, she pulled her out of there immediately. My sister deals with a lot of anger and a lot of depression, I would say, at a very young age because she's only 10 years old. And when I think of that, I think of the way that my mother was brought up. My mother grew up in a house where she had a white mother and an Indigenous father. She, unfortunately, my grandfather and my grandmother split up when my mother was in about 4th grade. And when that happened, my mother was left in a house with her non-Indigenous mom and her sister that took after our grandmother. So my mother was the only dark-skinned, dark-haired person in that house, and they lived in the glebe at this time. And from the stories my mother tells me, she didn't live a happy life. My mother started skipping school when she was in the 4th grade because her teachers looked down upon her. My grandfather has a grade 8 education, but nobody would know this because of how well he speaks and what an amazing man he is. You know, throughout all of the educational barriers that me and my family have faced, we still have overcome a lot of these things that were put in place to destroy us. And I say this because if it wasn't for these things that brought us down and made us feel smaller than we were, we wouldn't grow to be bigger than they ever imagined we would be. And it's things like this that I really look back on. I recently won a award from Youth Ottawa for, it was the Take a Stand Award. And one of my teachers from the 4th grade, I guess she remembered me, and she actually commented on it saying, "Oh, wow, congratulations, Kyrstin. I'm so happy for you." And the more I think of it, the more she probably seen that and could never have even imagined me winning something such as that, or winning the June Girvan Award. And it's things like that. I've met so many people who look down upon Indigenous youth, Indigenous folks. When I was in the 10th grade, I went to a very inclusive school, Rideau High School, as a few of you Ottawa people may know or have heard of. When I was going to this school, a lot of people had told me that, especially my own peers, that the school wasn't good, that it was filled with drug addicts and just very bad people. And I'm not the type of person to listen to what people say before I experience it myself. So that being said, no matter the kind of negativity that my peers or my family or people in my community had said about this school, I still took a chance on it, just like I do every single human being. And it was probably one of the best schools I have ever attended, and I have attended quite a few. This school really allowed me to bring my Indigenous identity into the light. And although there were a few bad apples within the school itself, it was immensely healing for me. I had teachers that looked up to me. I had students that looked up to me. I had teachers that went out of their way to make sure that I had excelled in the westernized education system. And I went to a school where the Indigenous identity was appreciated, was loved. We had a lodge that was built by my grandfather and his advising team. My grandfather named our lodge. We had a place specifically in the school that we were allowed to smudge. And it was the first school I've ever gone to that was very accepting of everyone's differences. We had a Muslim church and downstairs in the basement. We had our lodge upstairs, and there was just so many things that were able to bring these youth towards their own identities and to fully understand them a bit more. And when I was in the 10th grade, in 2017, they decided to shut that school down. And for me and a lot of other students, that was something that really pulled on our heartstrings, and it was almost like a slap in the face. It was the only school in Ottawa that was as accepting as it is. I've never been to a school such as it in my entire life. Myself and many other youth tried fighting to keep it open. We vocalized our concerns of closing the school down to the board. We vocalized how this is going to affect our mental health and our ability to go to school. We were kids that were falling between the cracks. We were kids that didn't enjoy going to school because we felt, as I'm going to say, we felt dumber than a lot of the other students within the school. And having the lodge there, having people that appreciated us and supported us, made it easier for us to go to school every day. It made it easier for us to look towards something. And still, no matter what we were going to say, the board already had its mind, chosen. It already knew what it was going to do with this school. And it knew that it was going to be shut down, despite what all of the community advocates were saying at these meetings. I do applaud the school board for allowing us to vocalize, our concerns and at least to hear us out. But at the same time, it was very harmful to the Indigenous community as a whole. We were kids that weren't appreciated at other schools. So this definitely had a toll on us. Myself and many other youth, whenever we transitioned into the next high school that was around us, they actually allowed us to build a lodge. They allowed us to make those changes because we made it clear at many board meetings that if that wasn't an option, that we would have more kids stop attending. We would have more kids that just didn't feel welcomed at this school. We went from a school with maybe 700 students every day to 1,600. So I'm sure you can imagine how much, that pained a lot of the kids. We needed one-on-one time with teachers. We needed teachers to care for us. And going from a school with 700 kids to 1,600, it's insane, absolutely insane, because these teachers that were supposed to be caring for us now have to care for, a very greater number than what we originally had. So we didn't get much one-on-one time, but the short time of me being at the second school that I attended, I definitely still feel a part of it. My blood, sweat, and tears will always be in those lodge walls, no matter what the situation is right now. I do always and every day thank the Creator for allowing the board to, mend their relationship by creating a new lodge with us and inviting the youth to be a part of that. Because when I attended Rideau High School, I wasn't a part of building that lodge, but I still felt connected to it. So being able to put my own thoughts and ideas into the lodge at Gloucester High School really had me looking at it in a different light. I now attend, I guess, part-time because I work full-time. I attend a school that was specifically created to bring the Indigenous identity to light. I go to a school called Urban Aboriginal, which focuses on Inuit, Métis, and First Nation students. Every day we learn different art forms about our people. We learn different teachings. We learn how to sing, we learn how to drum, and we learn things that we would be learning on the land within our own school. And because of this, so many students have been able to excel in this type of situation and environment. It's been said time and time again that Indigenous peoples need to be more connected to the land. They need to be more connected to their teachings, to their cultural ways. And with Odawa, which is an organization within Ottawa, had actually started this school because they could see that if these students aren't excelling within a westernized colonial education system, then maybe they will excel and succeed within our education system. And every day I'm so thankful for being a part of this school because of the fact that I had experienced so many hardships. And when I say hardships, I talk about, the sexism within schools, the teachers that don't understand who you are or where you come from, the teachers who don't open their eyes to see who you truly are or listen to you speak. Speaking with Sylvia and June and even Richard, I see that they are all willing to fully understand who I am as a person. Sylvia was so nice and invited me out to lunch, and she took the time out to learn about who I am as a person, learn about what I advocate for, what I, do within my day-to-day life. And it's people like that that really will change the view of Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. And it's people like you all that are going to bridge that gap. Whenever I was going to a Catholic school, and it was actually and I was telling Sylvia this the other day, I went to a uniform school, so we all looked the same. We were all dressed the same. And my teacher never said this to anyone else except for me. And I was I'm a very light-skinned Native, as I'm sure you can all see. But I was darker than all of my other peers and classmates, and I made it known what my identity was. I've always been proud of my background. I've always been proud to be Algonquin. And my teacher actually, I had a peer call me a slur one day, and I really didn't appreciate it. So I brought it to my teacher, and my teacher told me that it's because of the way that I hold myself. It's because I'm too flirty or too this or too that, which I was a very shy student back then. So I can never imagine myself being too flirty as he claimed. But why does an adult get to look at a student and say, you are too flirty or you hold yourself too high? When you tell a student that, they're going to make themselves lower because they don't want to be perceived as that slur that they've been called. They're going to think, okay, something's wrong with what I'm doing. Something's wrong with the way that I'm acting, but there never was. And, you know, June made a really good point when I met with her and Sylvia that why couldn't I talk to my teacher the way I talk to my parents? You know, question everything that he said. And I look back to that and I really do wonder why I never questioned it. But at the same time, it's because a lot of youth and a lot of children feel that they cannot question things that authorities say. And I think about that every day. And I remind my sister and my siblings, my sister's 10 years old. My brother is very, very new. My mother just had him. He's about 5 months old at this point. But it's insane that, you know, we get so scared of our teachers, of our principals, of people like that, and we don't question these things. What, you know, like what right did that teacher have to tell me that I was too flirty? Why could a teacher that was twice my age see that I was flirty? And that's something that really ticks me off to this day. Yes, Sylvia?
Kyrstin, I was just wondering, because we're getting close to our time, would you be willing to work with us in some capacity? I know that the listeners here want to hear a lot more of what you have to say. I mean, if I do, I know everyone else does. Would you be willing? Would you be willing to help educate us and bring us into a little bit more light after this conference is over?
Yes, for sure. Of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And thanks for being here and just welcoming us the way that you have, and just for being so open for, you know, with a bunch of adults. I think the majority of us are. For you to be speaking from your heart like this is just so wonderful. Thanks so much, Kyrstin.
Oh, I truly appreciate being invited to speak here today. And I'm so sorry if I went a bit over the time limit. But yes,
that's great.
Again, or ever want to hear my thoughts, I would be more than happy to work with you and anyone else.
Thank you.
We have a place for you on Voice Ed Radio starting tomorrow. Thank you, Kyrstin. Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, June. What a great start to the afternoon. We're going to take exactly a 5-minute break, and Sylvia's got her time her time clock there, so we're going to count on her. So if we take a 5-minute stretch break, it is now 2:02, so we'll be starting back at 2:07, and get your glass of water, and we'll meet you back here in 5 minutes.